Hi, I'm Andy, and welcome to a WatchCrave video. Today, we'll be having a look at a new acquisition and a new favorite of mine, the Seiko SBDC101, otherwise known as the SPB143 in the international markets. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm using SBDC101. That's because I bought this watch in Japan. A lot of Seiko watches have a different model number in Japan versus the international market. Originally, I never had any intention to purchase this watch, since it's pretty pricey, being retailed at $1,200 and it's even more expensive here in New Zealand. I've seen video reviews of it a while ago, but it never caught my attention. That was until late last year. While looking through pictures of watches on Instagram, I stumbled upon a very nice picture of this watch. A few dozen pictures and a bunch of video reviews later, I was hooked. I then did a bit of research on it and found out all about the pros as well as the cons. The only thing left was to find it for a good price. And as luck would have it, I was about to go for a short vacation in Japan, and as the Japanese yen was quite weak at the time, even if I was to buy the watch at the full retail price in Japan, I would still manage to save a big chunk of money. This particular watch was released in 2020 and is a reissue and a modern redesign of the 62 Mas, Seiko's first ever dive watch released in 1965. Beside this watch that you see here, there's also another color option and a bunch of limited editions. I won't cover those in this video since Seiko tends to release a new limited edition every year. As for the price, this particular watch currently retails for $1,200. In Japan, the retail price is 159,500 yen, which is currently around $1,100. Luckily, I found some coupons for the store that I went to and received a small discount from the retail price. When it comes to buying Seiko watches, you shouldn't buy them at full price. Either shop around or wait for a sale to get your money's worth. I reckon anything starting from 15 to 20% off is a pretty fair price. Now for the packaging. Since I got mine from Japan, the box may be a little different to your local Seiko's packaging. First, we have an outer Seiko box that houses the watch box and documents. The watch box is grey on the outside and sort of tan on the inside. The watch pillow also has the same tan color. Next to the box, we have the manual in both Japanese and English and an international warranty. This warranty is valid for a period of 1 year and also works outside of Japan. If you're planning to buy Seiko watches in Japan, keep in mind that not every seller will offer the international warranty. Most tend to offer the domestic warranty, which will only be honored in Japan. If there's a problem with the watch, you can still send your watch to a local Seiko service center though, just that it won't be covered under the warranty. Now with all of that out the way, let's get into the watch. The watch has the diameters of 40.5mm. According to Seiko, it has a thickness of 13.2mm, however I measured the actual thickness to be 13.9mm due to the protruding case back and the slightly domed watch glass. The lug width is 20mm, the lug-to-lug distance is 47.6mm. Now, as this watch comes with male end links, this means that there's a slight protrusion. The measurement that includes the end length protrusion is 52.5mm. As for the watch glass, the watch sports a domed sapphire crystal with AR coating on the inner side. For water resistant, it's rated at 200 meters. Since this is a Seiko, it is fully compliant with the ISO 6425 diver's watch requirements, so the watch should have no problem handling depths up to 200 meters. With four links removed to fit my 6.2-inch wrist, the watch weighs in at 163 grams. It is on the heavier side when compared to my other watches. As for the movement, this watch is running with the Seiko 6R35 movement. The 6R35 is a mid-range Seiko workhorse movement. It is an upgrade from the older Seiko 6R15 movement that often feature in Seiko mid-range watches. Seiko started rolling out the 6R35 in 2020. If you had experience with Seiko's entry movement line, the 4R35 or NH35, the new 6R line is essentially a small step up to the 4R line with slightly improved accuracy range and a longer power reserve. The 6R35 beats at 3 Hz or 21,600 beats per hour and offers a power reserve of a whopping 70 hours or almost 3 days. It has a date complication and also hacks and hand wind. In terms of accuracy, the stated accuracy range from Seiko is -15 to +25 seconds per day. For this particular watch, it's running at +4 seconds per day. Next up, let's have a closer look at the watch. As this is a modern reinterpretation, the watch case follows a similar case shape to the original 62 Mas case design. The case is beautifully brush finished on the top and sides. Unlike the original case, we have a polished chamfered edge running in between all the way to the lugs. The tips of the lugs are polished and rounded off nicely, so there's no sharp point. Seiko also went with drill lugs, which makes changing straps a breeze. The case has also been applied with a superficial layer of DiaShield coating to help prevent minor scratches. Onto the back of the case, first we have a nice and round bevel that is polished. This is perhaps the part I appreciate the most about this case. It eliminates any sort of sharp edges and makes this watch really comfortable on the wrist. The caseback is screwed down. The center of the caseback is decorated with the famous Seiko wave. Do note that this part is protruded from the case by a few millimeters, adding to the overall thickness of the watch. However, it's not noticeable on the wrist. The surrounding part of the caseback is laser printed with the Seiko and Prospect logo, along with the serial number and some decorative text. Moving on to the crown, we have a screw-down crown that's brush finish at the front. The crown is sadly unsigned, but at least it's easy to grip and operate. As this is a Seiko dive watch, there's a little trick you should know when operating the crown. You don't need to do anything special for unscrewing and setting the time, but there's a special method for screwing the crown back in. First, you need to push and hold down the crown. Then slowly rotate anti-clockwise until you can feel a click. Once you've felt the click, rotate clockwise and fully screw the crown in. You don't have to follow this method. However, it is recommended as you may face some resistance and end up wearing out or damaging the crown thread. For the bezel, we have a 120 clicks unidirectional bezel. The bezel is well finished, easy to grip, and also operates well. There's also not much backplay. However, it is a bit tight for my liking, and the click sound isn't as nice as some of the watches I've reviewed. Here's what it sounds like. For the bezel insert, it is made of steel. The insert is painted black and decorated with your usual diving timer in a silvery shade of white. There's a lume pip at the 12 o'clock position. The lume pip itself is recessed and is protected by a top glass, so it won't get dirty and patina easily. Zooming in, you can see that the bezel insert has a sort of brush finish to it, giving it a very nice sheen effect when viewed at different angles. Fortunately, the bezel insert is somewhat well aligned. However, when I went to the store to buy this watch, I had a choice between a display model and a brand new one. Unfortunately, the brand new one has a small bezel misalignment, so I went with the display model instead. Pretty sad of Seiko to not QC their expensive watches properly. Anyway, if you are interested in buying this watch or any expensive Seiko pieces, I would highly recommend buying it in person and inspect the watch as much as you can, as there's always that small chance of getting a small misalignment. Moving on to the bracelet, we have a 3-link style bracelet that is also applied with DiaShield coating. The bracelet is brush finish on top and bottom and polished on the sides. The end links are solid. They are also male end links, so there's a small bit of protrusion. As I mentioned before, the length measurement including the protrusion is 52.5 millimeters, something to keep in mind if you have a small wrist. However, the links do curve down quite a bit, so it should fit nicely even on smaller wrist sizes. One thing that is quite bad though, is that the end links do not sit flush against the case. There's a small 1 to 2 millimeter gap both horizontally and vertically. While it's not a major issue, it's still quite disappointing to see this problem on a $1,000 watch. As for the rest of the links, they're not too bad. There's a good amount of articulation to them, and they connect well. Despite a bit of play, the rest of the bracelet feels nice and tight. Another thing to note is that these links are connected via a pin and collar system. This means that you'll need a hammer tool in order to size them at home. While the tool is inexpensive and can be purchased for a few dollars, it would have been nice to get screw-in links instead. The bracelet does have a slight taper. It starts at 20 millimeters at the lug and taper down to 18 millimeters. Personally, the bracelet is my least favorite part about this watch. Seiko should have done a better job with the end links in my opinion. Onto the clasp, we have a button push clasp along with a safety latch. The clasp is brush finished on the top and sides and has a polished chamfered edge running in between. There are 4 micro adjustment holes. The safety latch is signed with the Seiko logo. The buckle part of the clasp is thankfully mill and is well executed in my opinion. The clasp operation also is very smooth and responsive. Finally, we have a small diver extension that requires a bit of nail to activate, essentially to remind us that this is indeed a dive watch. Now while the bracelet kinda lets the watch down, the dial is what brings it up and makes it shine. We have a greyish charcoal dial that is brush finish. There's a subtle sunburst effect when viewed at different angles. The indices are applied and have been filled with a generous amount of Seiko Lume Bright Lume. The edges of the indices are polished and the inner part is raised slightly. Below the 12 o'clock, we have the Seiko logo printed in silver. Above the 6 o'clock, the Prospect logo, automatic text and water rating are also printed in silver. At the 3 o'clock position, we have an unframed date window and a mini index for the lume. This mini index was put in after the watch initial release in order to satisfy the ISO diver requirement. Personally, I would have preferred if they framed the date window and make the mini Lume index a lot smaller. Onto the hands, we have a thick Seiko baton hour hand, a thinner baton minute hand, and a pedal style second hand. Both the hour and minute hands have a slight bevel to them, with one side of the bevel applied with a brush finish and the other side polished. This gives the hands a sort of a 3D effect and gives off a shimmering effect when looking at the watch. Finally, we have a minute track printed in silver at the edge of the dial. One thing I forgot to mention is that the rehaut looks to be quite thin. I'm not sure if this is due to the distortion of the watch glass or not, but it's a plus point in my book. In terms of lume, most Seiko dive watches tend to have very good lume, and this watch is no different. The indices and lume pip have been applied with a good amount of Lume bright. The lumes are bright and last for a good amount of time. Now, perhaps this may be the most important question. Does the watch fit on my tiny 6.2-inch wrist? The answer to that is yes, kinda. While it is certainly wearable, the protrusions from the male end links make the watch look a bit oversized. On top of that, the watch on the stock bracelet does feel quite heavier on my wrist and can become a bit uncomfortable over time. To solve these issues, I got myself an Uncle Seiko bracelet, and what a huge difference it makes. The watch now fits a lot nicer and feels way more comfortable due to the reduced weight. The color of the Uncle Seiko bracelet doesn't quite match with the color of the case because of the diashield coating, but it's really not that noticeable. Just a disclaimer, I'm not affiliated with Uncle Seiko by any means. I'm just a happy customer who likes their bracelet. If you're not keen on buying a new bracelet, another option would be to swap over to a strap. In my opinion, the watch goes well with either a NATO or Tropic strap. While it's not ideal that you have to swap out the bracelet for an optimal fit, it's something that you need to be aware of if your wrist size is smaller than 6.5 inches, since I don't think Seiko designed this watch with the smaller wrist in mind. So, what are my thoughts on this watch? First of all, I like to start with the movement, since it's neither a pro or con for me. There are certain aspects of the movement that are not ideal for a watch at this price, like the lower beat rates of 3 Hz and the somewhat big accuracy range of -15 to +25 seconds per day. But there are also good points, like the power reserve that lasts for almost 3 days, and the fact that it is a very reliable workhorse movement that will keep on ticking for years. Personally, I've had a good experience with the previous iteration of this movement, so I do not mind it. Now, let's talk about the cons. The watch gets quite a few minus points for me. The biggest issue for me is obviously the bracelet. It's a bit big for smaller wrist sizes, and the end links don't even fit the lugs properly. The links are also held together by pins and collars, making it a bit of a pain to size the bracelet. The next minus point is Seiko's misalignment. While the bezel on this watch lined up nicely, the other one at the shop did not. That means someone else probably ends up with a misaligned bezel. Not something you want to see from a $1,000 watch. The next point is rather subjective, but I would have preferred a silver frame date window, and it would be better if they make that mini lume marker a lot smaller at the 3 o'clock position. It kind of messes up the beautiful symmetry of this watch. Finally, it's the price. $1,200 is a lot to ask for this watch. Personally, I do not think it's worth the asking price. A fairer price would be around $900 to $1,000 in my opinion, hence why you should not pay retail price for this watch. So, what are the pros? Well, the first positive point is the dial. It is a gorgeous dial that is very uniquely Seiko. The dial is well finished and very legible. All the elements on the dial work well together to create a shimmering sunburst effect when viewed at different angles. This effect is also transferred onto the bezel, where the use of a stainless steel bezel insert helps elevate it further. I know that some might not be keen about not having a ceramic bezel insert on their $1,000 watch, but I reckon the steel insert better fits with the dial and the watch case design. Plus, you won't be able to get that brush finish on a ceramic bezel insert. The next positive point is the watch case. It has a very unique design and a good level of finishing applied to it. The edges and lugs have also been rounded off, making it very comfortable on the wrist. Finally, it's because it's a Seiko. This watch is what most people would consider an entry-level to mid-range luxury piece. A luxury piece is not something you would expect to break or throw away after a short while, but something you want to last for a long time. When buying luxury watches, you are essentially buying into the brand. As a brand, Seiko has been making watches for more than 100 years. They are an internationally recognized brand with many distributors and service centers around the world. For those reasons, and even with all of the watch's shortcomings, I still really like it. And that brings us to the end of this video. What do you think about this watch? Are you interested in getting your hands on one? If you already got one, what are your thoughts about the watch? Feel free to drop a comment down below and let us know. I hope this video helped you in some way. If you find it enjoyable or helpful, please drop a like and subscribe for future videos. It's a growing channel. I really appreciate your support. Until next time.